guess I didn't see him. What are you looking so sad about, Jeff?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talking. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all of that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it, can't get enough of it. Salute to everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, historic boxing stories. Today, historic boxing stories. Miss Cass, Unc Dre Finest in the building. Salute, Unc Dre. Always good to see you. All right, we're going to talk about some different fighters today. A little about their lives, their careers. It's Profile Friday. We got 6 fighters we're going to cover today. We're going to look at 2-ton Tony Galento, very colorful character from back in the 30s, 40s. Cleveland Big Cat Williams, what Ali Liston. Gave Liston 2 good fights for as long as they lasted. They didn't last long, but a 2-round fight can be a good fight. Look at Thomas Hearns and Marvin Hagler. 3-round fight was fight of the year. George Foreman, Ron Lyle, 5-round fight was fight of the year. So we're going to talk about Big Cat, Cleveland Williams. today. Okay? We are going to talk about Chuck Webner. A lot of people say Sylvester Stallone got the Rocky character from Chuck Webner's life. Chuck Webner even sued Sylvester Stallone because he didn't get any kind of royalties or anything. We're going to talk about that today. We are also going to cover Marvis Frazier. If his father, Joe Frazier, hadn't arrested him, and they fought Larry Holmes with just 10 fights and got demolished in the first round. Then he made a nice comeback. He was like on a 6-fight winning streak and put him in there with Mike Tyson. Mike got him out of there in 30 seconds. So if Joe would have had a little bit more patience with Marvis, could his career have been different? He only fought 19 times. We're going to talk about that today. And then we're going to look at Buster Douglas. We talk a lot about Buster Douglas and the Mike Tyson situation, but we're going to look at Buster Douglas's career, not just Mike Tyson. We're going to take a good look at Buster today. And then the Ray Mancini story, The Good Life, was a book written by Mark Kriegel, and they made a movie out of it. But the book, the book is always better than the movie. We're going to dig down into that today. When they made the movie, they didn't even cover the Alexis Arguello fight. Right, that was one of the biggest fights in Boom Boom's career. He lost it, but sometimes that loss to Arguello did more for Boom Boom's career did just as much or more than any win on his record, because Boom Boom was a young and upcoming fighter, and Arguello was a legend at that time. 13 years into his career, Arguello was a legendary champion, and Boom Boom went deep into the fight with him. So that was a big thing that loss to Arguello was a big part of his career. That's when people stopped and said, hold up, this young guy might be something. So, I just to understand it nowadays, when fighters suffer one loss and people start calling them bums and stuff. Because like I always say, anybody looks good after a win. But how do you come back from a loss? That's when you show your character. But all that today on CAD Sports The Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. Irony Boxing 1 in the building. What's up, Irony Boxing 1? And Mike Grimm. Salute Mike Grimm. How are you today, Mike? We're going to look at 6 different fighters on the profile today. Little true stories about their careers in life. A salute. Mike Grimm. Big, long-time CAD Sports supporter. Appreciate Mike Grimm 1,000,000,000%. Okay. But you know what we got to do first? We got to have our fight of the day. We can't start CAD Sports without the fight of today. It just wouldn't be right. So now, without further ado, the fight of the day. And I got to make today's show good because we got Unc Dre Finest in here today, man. Got to make it good. Anytime Unc Dre is in the building, salute Unc Dre Finest. Always a pleasure to see my friend Unc Dre Finest. Salute. Okay, so the fight of the day today is Mike Tyson versus Larry Holmes, January the 22nd, 1988. Tyson versus Holmes. Okay. And we're going to talk about it. This fight could have ended up very differently if we're going to get to that point if a certain thing hadn't happened in it. Let's talk about it. Tyson versus Holmes, January 22nd, 1988. The fight of the day. Okay, let's go with today's show. Appreciate everybody that stopped by so far. We got Mike Grimm, Irony Boxing 1, Unc Dre Finest in the building, and Miss Cass. Miss Cass ain't here. She's out there working, but she might be listening. Okay, let's go. Throughout his career, Larry Holmes had been underestimated. And when he started fighting his way up the heavyweight ranks while working as a sparring partner for Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali, no one thought Holmes was championship caliber. Even after he defeated Ken Norton in a thrilling 15-round war to win the WBC version of the heavyweight title, he still didn't get his just due. In 1980, many actually believed a decrepit Ali had enough left to beat Holmes. And after that, the pundits gave challengers Leon Spinks and Jerry Cooney solid odds to take Holmes' crown away from him. Instead, Holmes went on to rack up 20 successful title defenses. And nowadays, he's generally regarded as one of the best heavyweights to ever step into the squared circle. But in 1988, he was still being underestimated, specifically in regard to mass appeal. Holmes' career has supposedly come to an inglorious end with two close decision losses to Michael Spinks in 1985 and 1986. After the first defeat, an angry Holmes, who had been one win away from tying Rocky Marciano's record of 49 straight victories, told the press that the great Marciano couldn't carry my jockstrap. After losing another close decision to Spinks in the second fight, which most observers felt should have gone to Larry, the former champion spiced up his post-fight interview by declaring that the judges, the referees, and promoters can kiss me where the sun don't shine, and that means my big black behind. Okay, yeah, Holmes was upset because I thought he won that second fight too. So perhaps those staging Holmes' showdown with Mike Tyson could be forgiven for thinking it wasn't a matchup worthy of exposure on closed circuit or pay-per-view, opting instead to air it on HBO. After all, Holmes was old, unpopular, and had been out of action for almost 2 years coming into this fight. And surely it was a foregone conclusion that Tyson, easily the most impressive heavyweight anyone had seen in years, would dispose of Larry with little difficulty. Tyson versus Holmes was an intriguing matchup, but it lacked mass appeal, right? And yet, come fight time, as the two gladiators strode through a sold-out Atlantic City Convention Hall, surrounded by their respective entourages, the electricity in the old arena was palpable. Afterwards, more than one observer marveled at the tension in the air, jitters, and goosebumps, afflicting even the more grizzled occupants in the press section. The degree of anticipation and excitement surprised even the organizers of the show, including one Donald Trump himself. Yeah, I think Donald Trump owned that arena convention hall at that time in Atlantic City, yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. Now, what all had misjudged was the power and appeal of a classic storyline. And what had been overlooked was that Larry Holmes, despite his graceless comments, represented greatness. No one could deny that, right? And since most agreed Holmes had been robbed in the second Spinks fight, a Tyson versus Holmes fight offered another rendition of that stirring and timeless old tale, the clash between the wise old king and the bold young usurper. The bold young usurper. This was a good classic. The Wise Old King and the Bold Young Usurper. Okay? That's what this was. Tyson vs. Holmes was a battle for heavyweight history, as well as a bellwether fight for the phenomenon they called Kid Dynamite. People wanted to know, was Mike Tyson really as awesome as he appeared? This force of destruction, who had bested virtually every serious contender in the division. Was he a candidate for the Pantheon? Or could the canny old veteran expose him, find the chinks in the armor, the unseen weakness, and rob him of his power? Others would eventually take advantage of Tyson's shortcomings. But in fact, at this time, the fight against Holmes was Iron Mike's peak. His unique blend of power, quickness, and ferocity would never be more potent than at that time. 21 YGL Green Light is in the building. What's up? 21 YGL Green Light. How are you today? Good to see you again, my friend. Appreciate you stopping by and supporting. Fight of the day, Larry Holmes versus Iron Mike Tyson. He was Iron Mike Tyson then. See, the young crowd didn't see that Mike Tyson. Mid-'80s, he was Iron Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet. This fight was around that time. Okay, so let's continue. Let's salute 21 YGL Green Light. Good to see you today. Okay, so now I got to find out where I was at. Okay, here we go. Right here. Yeah. Now at the opening bell, Holmes appeared startled by Tyson's speed as the young champion bore in and unleashed wicked shots to the body, forcing the former champion to continually backpedal and clinch. Tyson gave Larry no time to set himself, no chance to find his rhythm. The veteran tried in vain to land a big uppercut or right hand to get Mike's respect, but his timing was woefully off. Yeah, Larry had been out of the ring 2 years, plus he was old. His timing was way off. Okay? The pattern continued in the second round. Tyson pressing, landing to the body. Holmes retreating and clinching, even scurrying out of harm's way to avoid being cornered. In the third round, Holmes started timing the young upstart a little bit better and landed a sharp right hand and a few uppercuts on the inside. But Tyson remained the more effective fighter, his two-fisted assault forcing Larry to clinch again and again. But while Tyson had won the opening 3 rounds, he appeared frustrated with the constant holding and wrestling as he got in a blatant low blow near the end of the third round and a left hook clearly after the bell. Okay? Yeah, Mike got that left hook in that third, after the third, clearly after the bell. In the fourth round, Holmes gave the nostalgic in the crowd a bit of what they had hoped to see. Up on his toes for the first time, Holmes circled the ring with seeming authority, snapping home several quick jabs for a moment, looking something like the Eastern assassin of old. But the vision was fleeting. His 38-year-old legs soon failed him. And then it was back to grappling and clinching and trying to slow down the younger, faster man. But Tyson never stopped throwing big punches with bad intentions. And finally, one got through the veteran's defenses and did major damage. and did major damage. Okay? One got through and did major damage. "21 YGL green light said, I ain't going to lie, Mike beat the brakes off of Larry Holmes." Okay, let's continue. Midway through the round, Tyson found the opening he was looking for and nailed Holmes with a perfectly timed overhand right. The shot putting Larry down hard. Shocked as much as hurt. The old champion made the novice mistake of getting up too quickly from the knockdown. His head still ringing as Tyson tore back in and sent him down a second time. And again, the proud Holmes was upright in seconds. He made the novice mistake back-to-back knockdowns. He got up too fast. Okay, and he paid for it. Tyson pursued as his day's quarry reeled about on unsteady legs. Holmes staggering and backpedaling as he tried in vain to regain his equilibrium, in the process taking punch after punch. A series of right-hand clouts from Tyson drove Larry to the ropes, where, this was significant here, Mike drove him to the ropes. The Eastern Assassin planted himself, timed Tyson perfectly as Tyson came in and then let go with a huge uppercut. But the punch never happened. Instead, Holmes' fist got snagged in the ropes. Now, if he could have got that punch in, he might have got Mike out of there with that one. Because Mike was coming in full speed. And his momentum would have did the job. All Larry had to do was land it in the right spot. If he could have got that on the chin, that might have been it. But his fist got caught in the damn ropes. That might have been it. I really believe Larry would have got Mike out of there. But if, can't go on what if, you got to go with what happened. His fist got caught in the ropes, right? And then a second later, Tyson landed the coup de grace, a final right hand flush on the jaw that put the former champ flat on his back. The referee waved his arms over the fallen old warrior as officials and cornermen flooded the ring. And this picture right here says it all. Too much. That's what the fight should have been called. Too much. That's what it was, just too much. The torch had been passed. History had been made. Tyson vs. Holmes had proven who was the rightful heir to the old king's crown. The only disputant remaining being Michael Spinks, whom Iron Mike would demolish in 91 seconds later that very year. And did Holmes have any sharp comments to make this time? Any protests? Any more angry words to offer? Tyson is a lot better than I thought, said the humbled ex-champ. A lot better. People can talk about Michael Spinks all they want. Tyson is the true champion. And there you have it, the fight of the day. Mike Tyson versus Larry Holmes. There's your winner, Mike Tyson. And that was the story of the fight. Too much. Iron Mike was too much. Okay, so let's get into this subject of the show. We're going to talk about, we got 6 fighters planned, time permitting. We're going to start with 2-ton Tony Galento. Okay? Colorful character. Fighter from back in the 30s, 40s, somewhere around there. In there. But how's everybody? It's Friday. We are at the end of a big week of boxing history. We're going to finish it with a bang. Okay? 2-ton Tony Galento is first. And there's 2-ton right there. What's up, 2-ton? Yeah, you're right, green light. He did beat the brakes off of him. But if that fist would have got cut in them ropes, history would have been different. Because Larry had excellent time, and he had time Mike coming in that time. And Mike's momentum would have did all the work. All Larry had to do was catch that chin. That would have been all she wrote. But his fist got caught in the ropes. He'll always talk about that, you know. His fist got caught in the ropes. If he could have got that one in, Mike wouldn't have had nowhere to go but down. But like I said, like they say, if is a crooked word. What happened was his fist got caught in the ropes, and Mike finished him off after that. 2-ton Tony Galento. Okay, he's going to be the first. We got 6 people. Profile Friday. We're going to look at 6 different boxers today. Now, next Friday is the first Friday of the month where we do an active boxer. This month is going to be Slick Shakur Stevenson. Next Friday going to be the profile lead. Shakur don't have a nickname, so I gave him one. Slick Shakur Stevenson. Okay? One of my favorites. Hard to beat to anybody. Him and Tank, if they ever get in there, that's a you pick 'em. That's 50-50 right there. Man, that's probably the biggest fight in boxing if we could get it to happen. Tank and Slick Shakur, Tank, Gervonta Tank Davis and Slick Shakur Stevenson. Yeah. That's the biggest fight in boxing right now. 2 future Hall of Famers. Their career is still unfolding, but could very well be 2 future all-time greats too. When it's all said and done on these 2 fighters' careers. Okay, let's talk about 2-ton Tony. Now, long before there was 4-ton fatty Andy Ruiz, there was 2-ton Tony Galento, one of the most colorful fighters to ever enter the ring. Dominique Antonio Galento, better known as 2-ton Tony Galento, a boxer active in the Depression era, had the dubious distinction of being the fattest man to ever fight for the heavyweight title, until Andy Ruiz came along and took the record from 2-ton Tony. So now we officially can call Andy Ruiz 4-ton Andy Ruiz. Now, Tony Galento is lost in the midst of time, except for boxing people who know the name 2-ton Tony. It is a shame because Tony Galento was one of the most original and wild characters to ever apply the sweet science. Now, who was Tony Galento? Who was 2-ton Tony? Mike Mazik. Salute, Mike Mazik. How are you today? Good to see you in the building. What's up, Mike? We're going to look at 6 fighters today on Profile Friday. We starting off with 2-ton Tony Galento. That's him up there. Let's salute, Mike. Okay. Let's continue with 2-ton Tony Galento. But who was 2-ton Tony? Okay. Let's talk about that. Now, Dominique Antonio Galento, like I said, better known as 2-ton Tony. He was active in the Great Depression era and best known for nearly knocking out Joe Louis. Okay? You're going to get to that too. Nearly knocked out Joe Louis. He was born on March 12th, 1910. Passed away on July 22nd, 1979. 69 years of age. Now, Tony Galento was one of the most colorful fighters in the history of the sport of boxing. Not a great deal is known about his childhood, other than he grew up in New Jersey and began fighting as a pro in 1928. Galento acquired the nickname 2-ton Tony for his excuse to his manager for being nearly late to one of his fights. He said, "I had 2 tons of ice to deliver on my way here." Because at the time he was working as a delivery man. That's what he told his manager. He was late for one of his fights, right? Working as a delivery man. And the manager said, "Tony, the fight get ready to start. Where you been?" He said, "I had 2 tons of ice to deliver, man." That's where he got his nickname from. Now, Galento is remembered as one of the most unusual fighters in the history of the sport. He drank on the way to the ring, right? And ate huge sandwiches in the dressing room before the fight. He almost bad as Nicolino Loach, because remember, between rounds, Nicolino Loach would get all his cornermen around him and light up a cigarette. Two-Ton Tony drank beer on the way to the ring and ate sandwiches in the dressing room before the fight. He was a heavyweight, so he had to worry about no weight or anything, right? Okay. And he wrestled an octopus and boxed a kangaroo and a 500-pound bear as publicity stunts. Okay? Wrestled an octopus and boxed a kangaroo and a 500-pound bear. Tony once ate 52 hot dogs, washed them down with beer on a bet before facing heavyweight Arthur Decatur. This was before a fight, right? Ate 52 hot dogs, washed it down with beer in the dressing room. He bet somebody that he could do that. Now, supposedly, his trunks did not fit him after he did all, so he had to be split so he could get in them before the fight. Despite claiming he felt ill, Galento knocked out his opponent in the 4th round. Ate 52 hot dogs, washed them down with beer, and went out there and knocked his opponent out in the 4th round. Okay? Now, Tony had the unique philosophy that he should eat whatever he wanted and whenever he wanted, and weigh whatever was the result of that. Okay? Eat whatever he wanted when he wanted to, and weigh whatever he wanted to. That was his philosophy. I'm glad he was a heavyweight. His training habits were also unique. Okay? Galento owned and managed a bar named the Nut Club, N-U-T, the Nut Club, right? That was the name of it. Okay? Yeah, that was the name of his bar right there. The Nut Club. Okay? So he owned a bar named the Nut Club in New Jersey, which he practically lived at in between fights. He claimed he did his road work after the bar closed in the wee hours. When asked why he trained at night, Tony said, "Because I fight at night," right? Makes sense. You know, they said, "Tony, why you train at night?" "I fight at night." Okay? At his heaviest, Tony was the same obesity body mass index reading as Andy Ruiz in the first Joshua fight. But Andy managed to wildly exceed Two-Ton Tony in the Joshua rematch. Perhaps Andy adopted Tony's unique diet and training methods. Okay. Now, what was Tony's style then? What was his style? Let's look at Tony's boxing style. His brawler. What else could he be? Tony was a vicious brawler who never let the ring rules or expectations of professionalism or sportsmanship interfere with his own interpretations of what boxers were there to do. Tony would cheerfully tell his many managers he was there to knock the bum out. And he really did not care how he did it. Okay, he didn't care. For instance, in his fight against Lou Nova, Tony kneed him, elbowed him, headbutted him, gouged him in the eyes, used repeated low blows, and on at least 2 knockdowns, Tony fell with his 230 pounds on top of him, knees first, okay? These 2, Tony knocked him down twice and then fell on top of him, knees first. Another unique Galento strategy was to not bath for weeks before a fight. Okay? He wouldn't take a bath for weeks before a fight. So his smell kept his opponent from clinching. Excuse me. Okay? Y'all hear that? Before a fight, Tony wouldn't take a bath for weeks. So his smell would keep his opponent from clinching him. Okay? Excuse me. Okay, let's continue. I read this earlier, I still can't stop laughing. I thought I would have it under control by now. Yeah. Now, Max Baer, after he fought Tony, said he smelled like rotten tuna and a tub of old liquor being sweated out. Okay? And he fought Jack Dempsey. No. He didn't fight Jack Dempsey. But Tony and Jack Dempsey. Aunt McQueen, what's up, Aunt? In the building. Yeah, this is colorful Tony Galento. Okay. 2-ton Tony. Okay. So Tony Galento and Jack Dempsey. Let's talk about that. In 1931, Jack Dempsey, retired and pushing 40, had become Tony's manager. Now, Dempsey believed Tony had real talent enough if he actually trained, lost weight, and actually learned to box. Jack Dempsey believed those things could carry Tony to the title, right? Now, Tony went through managers like he went through big dinners. Managers would come in and they thought they could convince Tony to actually get in shape and train. But they found out he was exactly what he appeared to be, a fat slob with power who was never going to train to maximize. Okay, Tony was just what he was. But Jack Dempsey, he came in, he thought he could get through when other managers had failed. And he had convinced Ray Arcel to become Tony's trainer, the legendary Ray Arcel. Wow, now Ray couldn't get through to him, wasn't no hope for him. So Jack Dempsey became his manager, convinced Ray Arcel to train him, 2-ton Tony. So Dempsey felt he had a diamond in the rough here, a future heavyweight champion. Jack just had to get Tony to train properly and actually get in shape. By early 1932, Jack Dempsey had enough of Tony's tactics. Okay, it took Jack a year, but he had enough of Tony, right? Galento was training in Stillman's gym on 8th Avenue in New York City. Jack Dempsey walked in, dressed impeccably in a handmade tailored suit and saddle shoes. His white silk shirt and tie had been imported from Paris. His French cuffs were monogrammed with the letters JHD, Jack Harry Dempsey. Okay, JHD. So Jack stood with Lou Stillman, who owned the gym, right? Jack stood with Lou Stillman, and remember, Jack dressed impeccably in his finest imported tailor-made suit, imported cufflinks from Paris, somewhere. Dempsey stood with Lou Stillman as they watched Galento horse around in the ring. Tony was grossly overweight and needed a bath, okay? He took nothing seriously, and he looked disgraceful. It only took Jack Dempsey literally, according to Arcel and Stillman's account later, about a minute to explode. Jack was so mad because he thought he had, convinced Tony to train and everything. Jack Dempsey got pissed off. Jack Dempsey asked for a pair of boxing gloves and quickly took his suit coat off and his shirt. Then Jack Dempsey jumped into the ring and said, Now, Tony, it's you and me. I'll show you how we used to do it. Stillman rang the bell, and Dempsey began to move around his fighter. And Dempsey was still in pretty good shape. You know, he was within 5 pounds of his fighting weight. He was retired, but he was still in good shape, within 5 pounds of the weight he used to fight at, right? And Tony Galento discovered to his sorrow that Jack Dempsey could really box. Dempsey fainted and set Galento up and then hit him with his classic left hook to the face, which split Galento's lips. Dempsey then closed in with a short right that broke Tony's nose. Blood sprayed on Jack's tailored trousers. Two-Ton Tony tried to cover up and begged Dempsey to stop. Jack Dempsey got mad. He was supposed to be training this guy. Tony wouldn't cooperate, so Jack said, I'm gonna get in there and beat your ass. So he split his lip, broke his nose. By that time, Tony was begging Jack Dempsey to stop, right? It was just sparring, right? So Tony was begging him to stop. Dempsey ignored him and continued to fire away on him. Luckily for Tony, Luke Stillman rang the bell to end the round ahead of time. Stillman saved it. The round wasn't even over, but Stillman rang the bell to end it, right? Tony was a complete bloody wreck. And Ray Arcel spoke up then and said, I quit. Take this bum somewhere else. He's driving me crazy. And then Dempsey, after they beat him up, he said to Galento, now I'm through with you. You can find yourself another manager and trainer. Jack, he couldn't just do that. At first, he had to beat the man up first and then quit on him. Right. What's up, Ray Patterson? In the building, RP. Yeah, Jack could have just quit, but he said he had to beat him up first, right? Had Tony begging for him to stop, and then Lou Stillman saved him. The round wasn't even over, but Lou went on and rang the bell because Jack Dempsey might have killed him in there, right? But what's up, Ray Patterson? RP, straight out of New Jersey. Okay, so, and then Jack Dempsey quit. Ray Arcel said, I'm not training this bum no more. Neither. Take him somewhere else. Get him out of my sight, right? And then Stillman later recalled that everyone in the gym at that time could hear Dempsey's left hook land on Galento's jaw. Ray Arcel said it best. He said there was a master showing an amateur how it's supposed to be done. And Dempsey would say for the rest of his life that Galento, if he had listened to him and trained, could have been a champion. Okay, so let's get to the Joe Louis. He actually almost knocked Joe Louis out. Tony versus Joe Louis. If you had trained and fought with Jack Dempsey, you might have. Tony versus Joe Louis. I wonder if he took a bath before that fight. Remember, he wouldn't take baths for a week before the fight, so the fighters wouldn't clinch. Tony versus Joe Louis. Okay. Somehow in 1939, Joe Louis was convinced to add Tony to his Bum of the Month tour, right? And defend the title against him. Now, Tony had managed to get to the number 4 contender ranking. Wow, how in the world did he do that? He was ranked number 4. And Joe exercised a discretionary defense against the colorful Two-Ton Tony, who shared a manager at that time with James J. Braddock, the Cinderella Man, and former champion. And coming into the Joe Louis fight, Tony trained as normal, as he normally did, drinking all night and eating all day, right? So before the fight, James J. Braddock was asked by a reporter if Tony had trained, and James J. Braddock said, I haven't seen Tony training, and I am not picking him to win. despite being considered to have no chance against Joe Louis. Someone must have forgot to tell Tony that. Before the fight, Tony was quoted as saying in his mangled New York accent, "I'll murder the bum." Tony said he was going to murder the bum, right? Unfortunately, that was not all he said. When Tony was told that Joe Louis was heavily favored, more than 8-1 to win by knockout, Tony reacted by saying in a pre-fight interview, the reporter said, "Tony, what do you think your chances are against Joe Louis?" Tony said, "Joe who?" The reporter said, "Joe Louis." Tony said, "I never heard of that bum." Right? Tony said, "I never heard of the bum." Long after the fight, Joe Louis admitted that he had heard over and over the things Galento had said about it and was not happy about it. Further, Tony decided a fine strategy would be to enrage the champion further. Joe Louis said, "Tony berated me something terrible before the fight. He got to me, and I hated him for it. I never hated anybody that I fought before. I decided to punish him before I knocked him out." But Joe would later admit he abandoned that plan after the first round, saying, "Galento hit too hard, so I knocked him out as quickly as I could." Joe Louis went after Galento the second the bell rang, and as Ali would quip years later, he gave him hell from the start of the bell. But to the astonishment, Tony clipped Joe Louis with a good hook in the late seconds of the first round and nearly put him down. The only thing that saved Joe was Galento literally could not catch him to follow up as Joe ran around the ring with Jack Blackburn screaming at him to run and Tony lumbering after him. Yeah, he hurt Joe bad in that first round. And Joe Louis was talking about how he was going to knock him out and all that. Tony had Joe Louis running. And the only thing that saved Joe, Tony couldn't catch up with him. Okay? Couldn't catch him. Now, Louis had turned Tony's face into a bleeding, ugly mess by the end of the second round, and his corner had asked about stopping the fight. But whatever else Tony Galento was, he was never a quitter. In the third round, Joe Louis got careless and walked right into one of Tony's patented left hooks. The punch literally lifted Joe Louis off the canvas and dropped him like a sack of wheat. Tony had him hurt in the first round and dropped Joe Louis in the third round. So Jack Dempsey had something to that. If Tony had actually trained and stuff, he probably could have been something. What's up, Pearl, sir? In the building. Salute. Yeah, we're talking about 2-ton Tony Galento right now, Pearl, sir. The man that drank beer in the dressing room. No, he drank beer on the way to the ring, I think, and drank sandwiches in the dressing room before the fight. And didn't take a bath for weeks before the fight, so his opponents wouldn't clinch it. And he almost got Joe Louis. Had him hurt in the first round, had Joe Louis running. Only thing saved Joe Louis, Tony couldn't catch him. And guess what? Tony dropped Joe Louis in the third round. Okay, so he dropped Joe like a sack of wheat in the third round. Now, Louis got up at the count of 9 and again ran until he recovered. But after that, it was all Joe Louis. Louis, who had knocked out his 3 previous opponents in less than 1 round apiece, said it was the toughest fight that he ever had. Tony, 2-ton Tony. Okay, that's what Joe Louis said. So he should have listened to Jack Dempsey. He might have been something. But in the 4th and final round, when Tony was defenseless, Joe literally hit him and later marveled about it. 12 times, as hard as he ever hit a man in his life. And Tony finally fell into the referee's arms, groping for the rope in a desperate effort to keep his feet. For the rest of his life, Tony would believe and would complain to anyone who would listen that his trainer's fight plan of not fouling and using a bob and weave to try to defend himself while attacking had cost him the fight and the title. Everyone else thought otherwise, that actually boxing had helped him. Now, Galento was raised to the #1 contender in 1939 because of this fight, okay? Because of the fight he gave Joe Louis, they made Tony the #1 contender. He defeated Lou Nova and was on his way to forcing a rematch with Joe Louis when Max and Buddy Bayer, the Bayer brothers, both beat him and stopped him. So that's why he didn't get the rematch. Now, Galento, realizing he would never win the title, fought 3 more times and then he retired. And then he joined the world of professional wrestling and found another occupation with acting. And his best role was being an enforcer in On the Waterfront. Tony is buried in New Jersey, not far from his bar. And wherever he is right now, Tony is undoubtedly eating a large sandwich and drinking beer. 2-ton Tony Galento. The man who almost knocked Joe Louis out. There's Tony. Yep. Had Joe Louis running in the first round, dropped him in the third, had him running again. And pissed Jack Dempsey off. And Jack Dempsey got there and beat him up. 2-ton Tony. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about, it's not going to be as good as 2-ton. I should have saved that one for last. Not going to be nowhere near as good as 2-ton Tony. But Cleveland Williams, Big Cat. Big Cat Cleveland Williams is the next profile lead for today. We're going to look at 6 fighters. I want to get to that Boom Boom Mancini story because that's very good. The Good Son made a movie out of it, and the book wasn't nowhere good as the movie. I mean, the movie wasn't nowhere good as the book. You know, in the movie, they didn't even put their Grail fight. That was crazy. How can you make a movie about Boom Boom Mancini's life and not put their Grail fight in it? That was part of it. It was a loss, but that might have been the biggest fight of his career. Because he went, I can't even remember how many rounds that was. He went deep into that fight, though, with Aguero. And Aguero was 13 years into his career, then already a legend. Third champion by then. And that's really the fight that put Boom Boom on the map. And then, the situation with Duke Kim. But I'm going to make sure we get to that one. We're going to go to the Big Cat now, Cleveland Williams. Okay, but there's 2-ton Tony right there. I think 2-ton Tony has become my second favorite fighter after Roberto the Red, 2-ton Tony. There's Big Cat. Yeah, 2-ton Tony is my second favorite fighter now. Yeah, that was kind of funny though. I was reading it this morning, but I still kept laughing now. Yeah, the man wouldn't take a bath for weeks before the fight, so his opponent wouldn't clinch it. But he made Jack Dempsey mad. Yeah, Jack Dempsey said, "Somebody find me some gloves. I gotta teach this guy a lesson." Okay, Big Cat, Cleveland Williams. Solid fighter. He fought Sonny Liston and Ali back in the day. Oh, wait. Wait. Okay, excuse me for a minute. I don't know who this is. Oh, boy, it's at 2 o'clock. Give me 2 minutes. Be right back. Oh, boy. Crazy. Okay. That wasn't too long. Okay, let's continue. Cleveland Big Cat Williams. Sorry about that. Okay, Cleveland Big Cat Williams. Nobody left. Wow. Thank you. Okay, I got to get back to Big Cat now. He was right after Tony. After Two-Ton. You got to see Two-Ton again. There's Tony. I don't know too much about Tony. I'm going to have to do some research on him. Okay. Cleveland Big Cat Williams. How good was the Big Cat? Pretty darn good. I don't think he ever had a title though, but he fought around a time where it was a lot of other good heavyweights, so But Cleveland Williams in his 1950s best, before he got shot and lost much of his strength and agility, who walked through all the modern boxers, and with his strength and punching power, would be a live dog against anybody in today's boxing. Now, people who actually saw Williams fight in the 1950s know how good he was. He was really only thoroughly manhandled by Sonny Liston, who would do the same to every other heavyweight who ever lived, not named Ali. Now, one temptation in sports is always to say the heroes of your youth were better. Such as like Mickey Mantle was better than Mike Trout or whatever, something like that. Except in the case of boxing. The older fighters, boxers from other eras, really are superior to the giants of today. The modern fighters are bigger, but are not better. Bear with me for one moment, please. Big Cat Cleveland Williams. I was on the wrong thing. Okay, I think this is what I'm looking for right here. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yeah, now Cleveland Williams, before he was shot by police in 1964, was a very good, but not great heavyweight. He was also a very weird guy. So who was Cleveland Williams? Cleveland Williams was born on June 30th, 1933 in Griffin, Georgia. Now, Griffin is now a suburb of the Atlanta metropolitan area. Now, Williams dropped out of school in the 7th grade at 12 years old and began working at a local paper mill. He would later in life explain how working in that mill started him fighting. I came out of a town where there were no boxing gyms. And what fighting there was? It was all rough and tumble in a clearing in the woods. Between cutting the trees and loading the pulp, we would get a 15-minute break. Instead of resting, we would slam bang each other around. Now, Williams realized if he was going to be a professional fighter, he had to have professional training. So he moved to Florida. And he somehow got Willie Pep's manager, Lou Viscusi's number, and called him from a Tampa bus station. Now, Viscusi was interested enough to send Williams to Ybor City, where trainer Tony Kinsella watched him hit the heavy bag and took him on as a client. Thus came Cleveland Williams, the boxer. Now, Cleveland Williams was a very troubled man. He was known as the Big Cat, okay? Now, the Big Cat, sad to say, in his prime, was known for his wild and bizarre behavior than his boxing skills. In 1959, during a domestic dispute with his then girlfriend, Gwendolyn Scott, Williams attacked her with a meat cleaver. Yeah, a meat cleaver. Scott was hospitalized, but she refused to press charges and refused to help the police or testify against Williams. So Williams managed to get away with it. Then, in one of those stories that only occurs in boxing, Williams, who was out in the morning running, took a detour from his normal route and jogged on over to the police station, whose officers had responded to his stopping his girlfriend. And he asked for and got back his meat cleaver. Went and got his meat cleaver back. Williams then went back running happily, carrying his meat cleaver. Yeah, I would have stayed away from that police station. I got away with it. I wouldn't have went near there. I just would have got another meat cleaver. But anyway, that's been like I was saying, he was a weird, bizarre person. In another of his extremely odd acts, Williams, in 1956, and on active duty with the United States Army, went AWOL. He was gone so long that he was considered a deserter, and he fought under an alias, Eugene Mack. Now, his most damaging incident, at least to himself, came on the evening of November 29th, 1964. Okay? Williams was driving near Houston, Texas, when he was stopped by highway patrolman Dale Whitten with the excuse that Williams was speeding. Williams, according to police reports, resisted arrest and was shot by the patrolman's .357 Magnum revolver during the struggle. Williams was hit in the stomach with the bullet lodging in his right hip, and doctors could not remove the bullet, which shattered Williams' right hip joint and caused partial paralysis of his right leg. Williams had to undergo 4 operations in the next half a year for colon damage and an injured right kidney. The right kidney was finally removed in June of 1965. Williams also lost over 10 feet of his small intestine and sustained nerve damage, which affected his left leg above the knee and caused it to atrophy. When he got out of the hospital, Williams was fined $50 and given a brief jail sentence after pleading no contest to charges arising from the incident with the policeman when he had resisted arrest. After his shooting by the police in 1964, when he was finally out of the hospital, he nearly died and was never the same physically. Williams essentially had a nervous breakdown when he got out of the hospital. Living in Houston, Texas, he began sleeping in his car, resting during the day, and wandering the streets of the very dangerous Fifth Ward at night, like some sort of sad wraith. Finally, his manager found him and convinced him to resume his boxing career. Now, let's look at his fighting style. Cleveland Williams' fighting style. Now, Cleveland Williams, before his shooting in 1964, was a big, strong power puncher who simply went after his opponents and slugged it out with them. Williams was a Herculean, thunderously hard-punching heavyweight. Going into the Liston fight, he'd amassed an overwhelming record of 43 wins and 2 losses, with all but 9 of his wins coming by knockout. Everything about Cleveland Williams was impressive. His power, his physique, even his nickname, Big Cat. His ring strategy was simple: to move forward and knock people out. Although no great technician, he stalked his prey with very fluid movement and good hand speed. Big Cat was a big, quick puncher with real power. Up to the time he got shot, he had a record of 62 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw. And 50 of those wins came by knockout. But 8 of his defeats, 4 in his prime, he was knocked out. And except for the great Sonny Liston and Bob Satterfield, none of his defeats were to particularly noteworthy opponents. Now, the first warning sign that Williams had a fatal weakness came in his 33rd fight. He was 32-0 at that time and had been matched with 7-win-2 opponent, Sylvester Jones. This was a 4-round preliminary fight, and Williams was knocked down twice and lost a decision. The fight was on the undercard of the Marciano versus Roland Estarza heavyweight title fight. 1. Right? And if Rocky watched it, he had to laugh. Now, Williams returned to his home base in Florida and won 5 more fights, including a knockout over Jones in their rematch. He was then in his 38th fight, matched against Bob Satterfield in Miami Beach. Williams was a late substitute for Satterfield's original opponent. Williams was knocked out cold by a much smaller Satterfield in the 3rd round, and it took several minutes to wake him up. He had a record that looked great on paper. He had size, strength, and could punch, but he could not take a punch from a heavyweight who could withstand power long enough to fight back. Any fighter's greatness depends on who he fights and who he defeats. To determine how great a fighter is or was, the level of a fighter's competition, when he fought them, and the results must be assessed. In Williams' case, he fought 6 top fighters: Muhammad Ali, Sonny Liston twice, Ernie Terrell, Mac Foster, Eddie Macon, George Chuvalo, and Bob Claro. Williams faced 7 top fighters in 9 fights and lost 7 of those 9 fights, 5 by knockout. To be fair, only the losses to Sonny Liston came in his years before being shot. Okay, that's significant, right? All those other losses were after he was shot. Okay? Years on top. He was in the top 10 for 3 years. Then after retiring from boxing, on September 3rd, 1999, Williams was hit by a car in a hit-and-run accident while walking across the street in Houston, Texas. Williams was actually walking home from a dialysis center where he was receiving treatment from injuries associated with the shooting that nearly killed him back in 1964 and forever changed his career. And that was 33 years earlier. Remember? The 66-year-old Big Cat died of his injuries at Ben Taub Hospital on September 10th, 1999. Williams is buried in Paradise North Cemetery in Houston, Texas. The bottom line, Cleveland Williams was a good but not great fighter who dominated journeyman-level opponents, even low-level contenders, but simply could not beat the best of his era. The Big Cat, Cleveland Williams. Al Booger, what's up, Al Booger? How are you? We're looking at a few different fighters today, Al Booger. You missed Two-Ton. You got to watch the playback, Al Booger, for Two-Ton Tony. That was good. The man that Two-Ton would not take a bath for 2 weeks before the fight so his opponents wouldn't clinch him, but he almost knocked Joe Louis out. Had Joe Louis running in the first and third rounds. Only reason he didn't knock him out because he couldn't chase him down. Jack Dempsey was his manager, but Tony wouldn't train and was too ridiculous. Jack Dempsey walked in the gym one day and looked at how ridiculous Tony looked and got mad and asked for some boxing gloves and got in the ring and beat Tony up. Okay, next, we're going to talk about Chuck Webner. You know, he was supposed to be the Sylvester Stallone's model for Rocky. And Chuck Webner actually sued Sylvester Stallone because he didn't receive any royalties or anything from that. But a lot of people said Rocky actually seemed more like Smoking Joe Frazier, right? Both from Philly, both lived above the gym where they trained at, remember? So yeah, let's talk about that. Chuck Webner. Now, we're gonna get the good son in from 314, no way. From Boom Boom too, because that was pretty good. Yeah, Marvis. Would Marvis have been better if they had to rush him in there against Larry Holmes in his 10th fight, and then Tyson early in his career, where he got knocked out? Joe Frazier rushed him, yeah. And Marvis only fought 19 times in his career. And Marvis could box and everything, but Joe trained him to be a brawler the type of pressure fighter like he was. And Marvis just wasn't that type of fighter, you know. But hopefully we'll get to that. But now, Chuck Webner. Did Sylvester Stallone steal Chuck Webner's life? Chuck sued him. We're going to look at the similarities. And we're going to look at Smoking Joe and Rocky similarities. He was more similar to Smoking Joe than he was Chuck Webner. But what's up, Al Booger? Good to see you today. Okay. Chuck Webner was a tough guy. He fought back in there with in the golden age of heavyweights. Never won a title. Okay. Now, did Sylvester Stallone steal there's Big Cat. Big Cat favors Mike Tyson a lot too, don't he? A little. There's Chuck Webner and Sylvester Stallone right there. But did Sylvester Stallone steal Chuck Webner's life? Now, while Stallone got the original idea of a movie about an underdog getting a title shot from the Ali Webner fight, the details in the movie line up far more with the life of Smoking Joe Frazier. Sylvester Stallone took inspiration for Rocky from a number of sources, but from the life of undisputed heavyweight champion Joe Frazier, most of all. Now, how did Rocky come to be in the first place? Now, Sylvester Stallone watched French contender and journeyman Chuck Wepner fight Muhammad Ali in March 1975. Now, Wepner was stopped in the 15th round by Ali, with no one expecting him to last as long as he did. Now, despite the fact that the fight motivated Stallone to begin work on Rocky, he has denied that Wepner was the inspiration for the story. It has been suggested that much of the inspiration for the story may also have been drawn from the life of Rocky Marciano, a real Italian-American champion, and far more likely, Joe Frazier, a local Philadelphia fighter who worked in a slaughterhouse as Rocky Balboa did, trained in many ways as Rocky Balboa did, and lived in the same way in a small place early in his career. He lived above his gym. In any event, Stallone began working on the script for Rocky the night he came home. He was at the Wepner-Ali fight, and he started working on the Rocky idea that very night, and finished it 3 days later. Rocky won. Now, Chuck Wepner thought Rocky was about him and sued Sylvester Stallone, right? Yeah, happy Halloween, Al Booker, to everybody. Happy Halloween, okay? Yeah. Chuck Wepner actually sued Sylvester Stallone. Wepner felt his fight against Ali inspired Rocky, and that he said, I had to sue to get the credit for my own life story. Now, it is true that the Wepner fight was the place Stallone admitted he got the idea, but there were huge differences in the story of the Wepner fight and Rocky Balboa. In Rocky, Stallone played a low-level journeyman who had never been a ranked contender. In real life, Wepner was a borderline contender for years. The ring had Wepner ranked number 9 in 1973, number 8 in 1974, and number 9 in 1975, whereas Rocky was never ranked. In Rocky, Stallone played a fighter who has never faced, let alone beaten, a ranked contender. In real life, Wepner had faced a number of contenders and beaten a few ranked fighters like Manuel Ramos and, more importantly, former WBA heavyweight champion Ernie Terrell. Those differences alone were huge. Moreover, nothing in Wepner's personal life or backstory lined up with Rocky Balboa in the movie Rocky. Far more of the story in Rocky came from the life of Smoking Joe Frazier. Frazier, who had a legendary sense of humor, said, Stallone got Rocky's name from Marciano, the fight from Wepner, and Rocky's entire life from me. That's what Smoking Joe said, but Smoking Joe didn't sue though, right? Frazier lived in Philadelphia as Rocky did. Lived in an old room in a small row house as Rocky did. Ran through the streets of Philadelphia to train in the early AM as Rocky did. And hammered meat carcasses in a slaughterhouse exactly as Rocky did. Right? So yeah, he got more from Smoking Joe than he did Chuck Wepner. Frazier felt the inspirational story of a dirt poor kid training to be a champion was stolen. Not only that, but details of Joe's life stolen verbatim. Frazier never sued though. Frazier described Rocky as a sad story for me, as I felt I was never given my credit for the way his training and my life inspired a part of the film. Well, you should have sued Smoking Joe. Indeed, for Frazier, a dirt poor kid who came to Philly at age 15 and was working in a slaughterhouse before and during the early part of his boxing career, historian Niall Grace says, we're talking about his own past. Frazier described the job he once held in the Philadelphia slaughterhouse, where he would punch the hanging meat as a form of training. Years later, this was something that Stallone used for Rocky's own training regimen for the movie. Frazier also talked about how he used to run up the museum steps in Philly, and how that was another idea that Stallone used for Rocky, which became instantly synonymous with the fictional character. Wepner got credit and money for his part. The Ali Wepner fight by saying, Joe Frazier, an old-fashioned tough guy, wouldn't stoop to sue. Wepner got money for suing, right? But Joe Frazier, an old-fashioned tough guy, wouldn't stoop to suing. It also helped that Stallone carefully cultivated Frazier and gave him a bit appearance in Rocky. Still, Joe would have never sued. It just wasn't his style. But he did get some money for it because he was in the movie, a small part, so he got something out of it, you know. Yeah, Joe Frazier. Okay, we get time for one more before we get to Boom Boom. We got Marvis and Buster Douglas. Let's talk about Marvis Frazier. Next, there's Marvis and Smoking Joe. Yeah, this is Profile Friday. We just talking about some different fighters today. Now, did Marvis Frazier have any potential? Let's talk about it. Or was he rushed by his father? Then we're going to talk about The Good Son, the book. Mark Kriegel wrote the book. Remember Mark Kriegel, the used to be an analyst on ESPN boxing? Yeah, good book. Came out like 2012, I think, something like that. I read it like 2018. They made a movie. I was going to see the movie, but then a buddy of mine, when he told me that the Alexis Aguero fight, and then I said, I'm not wasting my time. If they left that out, what else did they leave out? That fight put him on the map, although he lost it. But yeah, that was a huge fight in his career against a legend. The Aguero was a legend already when he fought Boom Boom. Yes, he was. Okay, Marvis. Did Marvis Frazier have any potential? Could he possibly have been something like his father, or was he just not built for that? Marvis Frazier had enormous potential. He was considered by many the most promising amateur heavyweight in his class and could have been a great pro. What happened? Father Joe Frazier is what happened. Trying to turn a very talented mobile boxer into the one thing he couldn't be, a clone of his ferocious father. Yeah, that's where he messed up at. He was a good boxer, but he wasn't no Joe Frazier, the type of pressure fighter Joe Frazier was, and Joe tried to turn him into that. Okay? Now, Marvis Frazier was a very highly regarded prospect as an amateur. He was among the 3 top-ranked amateur heavyweights. Okay? Among the top 3. There are many in the sport who felt that Marvis had the natural ability and work ethic to become a pro champion, and that his father, Joe Frazier, ruined him. So who was Marvis Frazier? Marvis Frazier, son of Smoking Joe Frazier, was a highly gifted and top athlete at Plymouth White Marsh High School before he went to the Joe Frazier gym to keep in shape for the upcoming year for football, basketball, and wrestling. But while working out at his father's gym, he fell in love with boxing. And that was it for intramural sports. Marvis would say later, I was good at all sports I tried, but the one I fell in love with was boxing. He was good enough that Hall of Fame trainer George Benton came in one day to watch someone else. He saw Marvis and saw such potential that George took on training him as an amateur, highly unusual for such a highly regarded pro trainer. So his amateur career. Under George Benton, Marvis won the 1979 Pennsylvania State Golden Gloves Heavyweight Championship, the 1979 National Golden Gloves Heavyweight Championship, the 1979 gold medalist at the World Junior Heavyweight Championships under 19, 1980 National AAU Heavyweight Champion, and the 1980 Olympic Trials Heavyweight Champion. But that was the team that didn't go, remember? He was on that team, right? But didn't get to compete because of politics. The United States boycotted because it was in Moscow. They was mad at Russia for invading Afghanistan, remember? But Marvis was on that team. So robbed of the chance to compete. With an amateur record of 56 wins and 2 losses, he turned pro in September of 1980 with extremely bright pro prospects. It should be said that one of his more notable amateur wins was over a sober Tim Witherspoon. See, Joe Frazier should have let George Benton train him as a pro. He probably would have did much better. But Joe wanted to train his own son, so. But George Benton trained him in the amateurs. He should have let George Benton train him in the pros. Probably would have turned out different. He wouldn't have rushed him like George Benton wouldn't have rushed him like Joe did. One of his 2 losses, he had 2 losses as an amateur. One of them was when a freak punch from James Broad hit his neck and paralyzed him momentarily, leaving him unable to continue the fight. His only legitimate loss as an amateur was to Tony Tubbs in a fight which most observers thought he actually won. So his pro career. In the history of boxing, there has never been a heavyweight fighter more badly mismanaged than Marvis Frazier. None. Zero, zilch, nada. None. With the best of intentions, Joe Frazier destroyed his son's career. Okay? With the best of intentions, Joe destroyed Marvis's career. Okay? First, Joe took over training Marvis. And that was the beginning of the end. Like I was saying, he should have let George Benton kept on training, right? But Joe took over the training. The problem came when his father decided to take a hand in his training. Prior to that, he had always been coached by George Benton. Remember, George Benton walked in that gym when Marvis was first started boxing as an amateur. George Benton came to watch somebody else, but he saw Marvis and took over training him as an amateur. And George Benton didn't really train amateurs, so Marvis had to be good, right? But then Joe took over in the pros. Now, since Benton had guided Marvis to a 56-2 record and is in the Hall of Fame as a trainer, it was a disastrous mistake. He had a Hall of Fame trainer. Joe Frazier is nowhere near the Hall of Fame as a trainer. Matter of fact, Marvis was the only fighter he trained that I know of. And after the way he mismanaged Marvis, no other fighter would touch Joe Frazier as a trainer, right? He had a Hall of Fame trainer, and Joe took over. Joe could have still had a hand in it, but he should have let George Benton continue. And George Benton would later sorrowfully say, if they had left him with me, Marvis would have been good enough to win a title. And I agree with that. Joe was down at a Boys and Girls Club in Wilmington, Delaware, the year of his death. Boxing writer Ken Hissner asked him, when did you start training your son Marvis? Joe replied, when he turned pro. And that decision by Joe was the main ingredient in ruining Marvis's career. It wasn't the only ingredient, however. Joe was a worse manager and booker for his son's fights than he was a trainer. And that's saying something, right? Worse at managing and making the fights. Second, Joe insisted Marvis change his style from a classic outboxer, which perfectly suited his size, speed, and the mobility, and become like Dad, a swarmer. And the man made the Olympic team as a classic outboxer in the amateurs. Why you want to change him into a swarmer as a pro? That was just crazy. Joe took too many punches in the head. That's all I can think. He wasn't thinking clearly, man. That was just bordering on stupidity. The only trouble was Marvis did not have his father's fury or his chin. Marvis had a good chin, but a swarmer needs a great chin. Okay, got to, mandatory. Swarmer can't have a good chin. A swarmer got to have a great chin because you're constantly getting hit in it when you swarming, pressure fighting. You got to have a great ATG chin to be a successful swarmer, okay? Larry Holmes later observed, Joe tried to make his son into him, but Marvis wasn't Joe. He wasn't quite as big as Joe. He was nowhere near as strong as Joe. He was a boxer, not a slugger. And I love Joe, but he ruined that kid. That was Larry Holmes. Speaking facts. The terrible booking, the wrong style, and the awful fight plans were all the work of Marvis's father, Joe Frazier. Further, Marvis loved the mental part of boxing, the movement, figuring out an opponent's timing, adjusting, countering, none of which is suited really for infighting, for a swarmer, in which you basically rush in and beat the hell out of your opponent, right? To fight inside as Joe Frazier did, you need great strength and a knockout punch. Marvis was a master technician, or would have been if Joe would have left him alone. He was not a powerhouse knockout puncher. 8 knockouts in 21 fights. He had literally none of the qualities to be Joe Frazier. With all the qualities, speed, quickness, skill, vision, timing, to be Hall of Famer Jimmy Ellis. Now the phone ring. I'm not asking that. Muhammad Ali reportedly said, "Their kids look more like me boxing than Joe Frazier." And that, a classic moving outboxer, was exactly what Marvis was. Not just good at it, but potentially great at it. He had exquisite control of his jab, first-rate hand speed, superior timing, excellent footwork, and more. Eddie Futz said, Joe tried to make the kid things he wasn't. The kid could really box, but Joe wanted him to be Joe, and Marvis just wasn't tough or strong enough, and he couldn't punch like his pop either. Ken Norton said, I love Joe. They was best of friends. Ken Norton said, I love Joe Frazier, but come on. Marvis is a stick and move guy with real skills. So why in God's name would Joe put him in the same search and destroy style as his own? Because like I said, Joe Frazier took too many punches in the head. That's why. He wasn't thinking clearly. Third, Joe was a worse matchmaker as he was a trainer. And that's saying something. He was the worst matchmaker. Now, Marvis only had 21 fights over 8 years in the pros, while having 56 and 4 years in the amateurs. Yeah, 21. I said 19, but 21. 21 fights over 8 years in the pros, 56 and 4 years in the amateurs, because George Benton was his trainer then. George Benton repeatedly worried that level of inactivity didn't help Marvis any. Marvis was only 28 when he retired. Joe ruined him. Why wouldn't Joe let Marvis fight? George Benton said, Marvis had a built-in audience in Philly. The fans loved him and his family, and he would have happily paid to see him fight. But Joe insisted he would only fight in New York, in the Garden. And so Marvis sat idle for years. Yeah, because Joe had dementia pugilistica terrible. By the time Joe toward the end of his life, when Joe Frazier was talking, he was in such bad shape. It sounded like he was talking with an accent. So that's why it happened. He wasn't thinking clearly. Couldn't have been. The man made the Olympic team as an outbox. Why are you going to try to change him into a swarming pressure fighter? Try to make him you when he clearly wasn't you. That was just crazy, man. He threw Marvis in the ring with the world heavyweight champion of the world, Larry Holmes, when Marvis had only 10 pro fights. Okay? Never was the same after that. It was terrible. Not only did Joe make Marvis fight in a style he simply was not good at, he negated everything Marvis did well. The skills that enabled him to soundly beat Tim Witherspoon in the unpaid ranks, and then compounded by throwing him in with Larry Holmes with just 10 fights. And making a glaring mistake even worse. Marvis had been out of the ring for 17 months before he went in with Larry Holmes. Okay? Damn. Joe hadn't fought in 17 months. To escalate the mistakes he had already made in booking his son with a great champion like Larry Holmes in 10 fights, Joe then enraged Larry Holmes by attacking Eddie Futch. And Eddie Futch was his trainer. He said, "Futch ain't no good. I made him look good and he stabbed me in the back." To complete enraging Larry, Joe then savaged Holmes at the weigh-in, telling reporters, "Larry Holmes makes too many mistakes. He used to work with me sparring, and I set him down every day. Guess he got tired of that because, as I remember, he took his money and went home." Yeah, Joe was suffering from that dementia pugilistica. He couldn't have been thinking clearly. Couldn't have been. Yeah. Holmes, ironically, used many dirty tricks Joe had taught him when they were sparring against poor Marvis, like using his arm to literally block Marvis's view by pushing his head, throwing Marvis into the ropes and pounding him as he came off. Larry was openly pushing him onto the ropes. All Joe did was scream, "Go inside, hit him harder." Holmes said to Marvis after the fight, "That's all the lickings your daddy gave me in the gym." Bad as that slaughter was, Joe made one more mistake to make. Put him in there with Mike Tyson. And that lasted all of 30 seconds. Let's talk about this Boom Boom fight, Boom Boom Mancini thing, because that's pretty good. I wanted to get to that before we get out of here. Okay? The Good Son book. Movie. I read the book, but I didn't see the movie because, the movie is not as good as the book. And then my buddy told me they didn't put Alexis Arguello fight in the movie. I said, "Nah, I'm not watching that nonsense." But yeah, I really wanted to talk about that. The Boom Boom Mancini story, it was good. Big Koo Kim, the guy that died in the ring, remember? From the Boom Boom fight. Yeah, we got to cover that. It was Boom Boom and Duke Koo Kim right there. We got 20 minutes. We can get it in 20 minutes. I'm going to be jumping around in it, This is really good. Take it from me. Had to get this in. I should have did it earlier. Okay, here we go. Anybody like boxing books? This is a good one here. The Good Son. Written by Mark Kriegel. Yeah, Mark Kriegel, used to be an analyst for the fights on ESPN, remember? Get that more people. Okay. What's that? Disappeared. Got to be able to see the chat. There we go. BBO Sports. Why did I miss a lot of people? Wow, I'm sorry. BBO, Kung in the building. Andre Finest. Yes. What's up, BBO Sports TV? We're just talking about various fighters today for the profile. We're going to talk about the Ray Mancini story now, The Good Son. Get the book. When I first got it, I was just going to look at the foreword and maybe read a couple of pages in the first chapter. I looked at it, like 45 minutes had went past. I was still reading. It's that kind of book, man. But I'm gonna go through this. Let's talk about this. Okay. Ray Mancini, The Good Son. Okay. Now, the 1980s remained perhaps the most successful decade in boxing history. A rare time when the sport was highly popular and widely accepted as mainstream entertainment. Champions such as Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvelous Marvin Hagler had become huge stars. And right there with them was Ray Mancini. But the story of young Boom Boom Mancini is not just about triumph and success. It's also about every prize fighter's worst nightmare. Ray not only became a media darling, a champion, and a millionaire, he also had the misfortune of severely injuring an opponent. South Korea's Duke Koo Kim, who fell to Mancini's fist in round 14 of a terrific nationally televised battle, would die in the hospital a few days later. Y'all saw that fight as it happened too. Yep. Fights used to be on regular TV back then. Now, Duke Koo Kim did get up and Boom Boom knocked him down, but then he collapsed in his corner, and that's when he never came back. But after Boom Boom put him to sleep, he did get up. After the fight was over, he did get up and went to his corner, and then that's when. Now, The Good Son, a documentary which explores Mancini's life and career, as well as the circumstances and consequences of Kim's tragic death, is a unique and moving film. The tale told by director Jesse James Miller and adapted from Mark Kriegel's commendable book of the same name is above all one of families and relationships. The story of Boom Boom is in fact the story of the Mancini clan, beginning with Lenny Mancini, Ray's father, who was the top-ranked contender to the lightweight title in 1941, when he had to abandon his boxing career and instead serve his country during World War I. Yeah, there's a shot of his father there, Lenny. He was the number one contender to the. He was a better boxer than Ray. He had skills and everything. Ray just liked to get up into the pocket and slug it out, but his father could box. Yeah, that's his father right there. He went to World War II. He got injured, and then he couldn't continue his boxing career when he came out. Yeah, Bob Aaron Kong says Bob Aaron promoted that fight. He said he couldn't watch boxing again. Yep. Yeah, that's Boom Boom's father right there, Lenny Mancini. Now, yeah, he went to the war, and upon his return, and after a failed second run at boxing glory, Lenny focused on attending to the needs of his family in Youngstown, Ohio. And thus, we meet the young Ray Mancini, the popular athletic kid who obeyed his parents, did his homework, and eventually followed his older brother to the boxing gym, where he found his true passion and purpose in life. By the 1980s, the boxing media and the television networks had recognized the huge potential of the white, good-looking, working-class kid with the all-action style and the touching story of how he had promised his dad he would one day win the lightweight crown just for him. And that's significant because he won the lightweight title, and that's the exact same weight class his father competed in. Okay? With lightweight. It is him and his father right there. Yes, the man, he'd be sitting up at the fights and stuff, Lenny. That's how he looked right there in the 80s, the father, when he'd be at the fights and everything. I remember him, yeah. Now, this is where the documentary takes off Interviews with Mancini family members and friends document Ray's ascension up the ranks. They describe how the demoralized people of Youngstown, Ohio, rallied behind their newfound hero, filling up local gyms to find something to cheer for while dealing with chronic unemployment and climbing crime statistics. The young Ray Mancini, always eager to please those around him, duly obliged by winning contest after contest for his family and for his townspeople, working his way up the ranks and giving his hometown hope. There's Boom Boom after he won his first title right there. Now let's talk about that. There he is. Okay. Hurry up. We got 15 minutes. Okay. Now, with each new triumph, Ray impressed more viewers on national TV, drawing accolades from the media for his thrilling style and dramatic victories. Bang that body, boom, then come up to the chin was the only strategy he knew, as told by Boom Boom himself to an enthralled Sugar Ray Leonard. And Sugar Ray replied, "I could never fight that way. Indeed, it takes a special kind of boxing to trade shot for shot every time out. But if the talented Sugar Ray Leonard could never fight that way, Boom Boom could never fight any other way, even if he had wanted to or tried." That's the only way he knew, okay? So, okay. Now, Mancini's first shot at the lightweight crown, a TKO loss to the great Alexis Arguello, is completely ignored by the documentary, but it's in Mark Kriegel's book, even though his gallant performance in that fight did as much to endear him to American sports fans as anything else. Yeah, that loss to Arguello did just as much or more for his career than any win on his resume, okay? Arguello had been in the ring 13 years, was an established legendary champion, and then Boom Boom went, I think it was like 13, 14 rounds before Arguello stopped him, okay? So, yeah. Instead of talking about the Arguello fight, the film cut straight to Ray's title-winning victory over Arturo Frias for the WBA version of the title. Now, special attention is warranted when we hear Ray's former promoter, Bob the Bobfather Arum, of all people, called the WBA corrupt. Yeah, Bobfather calling somebody corrupt. But the Bobfather called the WBA corrupt for trying to prevent Mancini from fighting for their title belt. Ray stopped Frias in the first round to finally win the championship, thus fulfilling the promise he had made to his father years before. And it was significant because it was lightweight, right where his father was the number one contender before he went to the war. The lightweight division, right? That's significant. And there's him and there's Duke Koo Kim on the scale. That's at the weigh-in. Ray looking on. The weigh-in before their fight, their fatal fight. So, inevitably, the triumphant mood of Mancini's meteoric rise to the top of the boxing world changes when we revisit the Duke Koo Kim fight, a tragic contest that still casts a shadow about over 4 decades later. In documenting the ominous showdown, the film features interviews conducted with Kim's wife, his son, his parents-in-law, and trainer, all living in South Korea, all of whom paint a vivid picture of the rugged, determined, and fatally valiant fighter, Kim. A veritable war of attrition, Mancini vs. Kim was fought in Las Vegas in front of thousands of rabid spectators and broadcast on national television. The vicious contest seemed destined to become an epic battle for the ages, as the punishment exchange between both battlers was unrelenting. The fight was a war, with both Ray and Duke Koo determined to stay on their feet and fight until the bitter end. And when the end finally came in the early moments of the 14th round, it was a hammering right from Mancini that floored Kim and forever sealed the fate of the Asian warrior. Kim was immediately taken to the hospital where he would die 4 days later from a brain hemorrhage. Okay? It is more action in the fight right there. 4 days later, he died. This story is already known by fight fans, as it is the aftermath of the tragic fight. The challenger's mother and the fight's referee both committed suicide after Kim's death, okay? And Mancini was never quite the same fighter. But the film's value comes not just from retelling this story, but from its intensity personal approach to it. After all, Mancini had a relationship with the romanticized version of boxing from the start. Not only did he label a picture of his father's busted up visage after a grueling fight as the most beautiful picture he ever seen of him, but Ray himself became the poster child of the American boxing dream with his rocket-like climb to the top. It is as sad as it is ironic that it fell to such a fighter who traded on heart and will as much as power and aggression, who believed in all the self-serving myths of boxing to endure the harsh reckoning that comes from the most tragic outcome possible. To me, there was nothing righteous about it, but it's an honorable sport, says Ray to the documentary. There's nothing more pure than boxing. One man facing another man, challenging each other, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Now, let me slow down. I'm trying to hurry up for this. But Ray said, there's nothing more pure than having one man facing another man, challenging each other, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, every which way. But that night, it took all the honor. It took all the love. It took everything away from me. That night did. Now there's Duk Koo Kim after the knockdown. But he did get up the fight ended there. But he did get up and walk to his corner after that. He actually got up from that, but he collapsed in his corner and then he died. Rushed to the hospital. Yeah. So when Mancini talks about his efforts to deal with the public's reaction to the incident, his frankness and vulnerability are deeply affecting. Few things must be harder than trying to shake off ignorant and careless accusations. People on the street asked him how it felt to kill a man with his bare hand before Kim was even pronounced dead. And the queries continued for a long time. How am I supposed to feel? An upset Ray demands of the camera. I'm dying inside. You had ignorant people on the street when Kim was still in the hospital within those first 4 days, hadn't even been pronounced dead yet, asking Ray how it feels to kill somebody with your bare hands. That's plain ignorance. Yeah. Now, the scenes dedicated to Ray's meeting with Kim's wife and son are also powerful, if somewhat muted. It almost brought me to tears in the book. Almost, but it didn't. You know, when you get to the book part where he met with Duk Koo Kim's wife and son, almost brought me to tears, but it didn't. Okay, almost. But anyway, the scenes dedicated to Ray's meeting with Kim's wife and son are also powerful, if somewhat muted. But the book captures it all. But despite the awkward circumstances of the encounter and the language barrier, real human drama and emotion fill the screen. And the sequence in which, now listen to this, and the sequence in which Kim's son describes his attempt to fully understand his father's story stands out most of all. Duk Koo Kim never met his son, as his wife was pregnant with his son when that fight happened, gave birth after he died. He was pregnant with his son when this fight happened. He never met his son. Okay. But the younger Kim, poised and serene in front of the camera, also a good son, tells his own tale of loss and discovery. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, he never actually got to meet his son. The fight happened before, his wife was pregnant when he died. Okay. Yeah. So, come on. Dang. Here we go. So, the good son succeeds at effectively portraying the major events in Raymond Sr.'s life because it gets so close to those who played a part in his stark storylines. By coming together in search of communion and reconciliation, Mancini and the Kims gained the chance to heal and put the past finally behind them, where it belongs. Now, this doesn't mean leaving the memory of Duke Koo Kim behind, but instead strengthening it and paying homage through remembrance and understanding. There you have it. Yeah. Okay, that was the story of Boom Boom Mancini. Yeah. It's talking about the book. They made a movie, but the movie wasn't. Yeah, that's the one defined on it. That was a catalyst from going from 15 to 12. Yeah. It didn't happen right away, but by the end of the 90s, they had dropped from 15 rounds to 12. Okay. And that's the week on Cash Sports The Box Story. Monday, we're going to have another trilogy. I don't know for sure which one it's going to be. Michael Carvajal, Humberto Gonzalez, or Canelo Triple G, or the 24th fight series. No, I'm just kidding. Henry Armstrong, Sam Langford and Harry Wills had a 20-something fight series. I'm not doing that one. It was a 5-fight one I was thinking about. Harry Greb and Gene Tunney. We might cover that one Monday. Yeah, that was 5-fight series. But appreciate everybody for support for the entire week. Let's see. Kong, BBO Sports TV, Al Booger, Puro, Ray Patterson, Ant McQueen, Mike Mazik, 21, YGL, Greenlight, Mike Rim, RNA Boxing, Unc Dre Finest, Miss Cass. Appreciate everybody. We'll be back next week with some more boxing history. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's The Box Story, bringing you all that boxing history. Appreciate everybody's support. Everybody have a great weekend.